The first thing you need to know about me is I don't do half-assed, not in the core, and sure as hell not when it comes to my own house. So when I decided to slap a full set of solar panels on my roof, I didn't just hire some sketchy dudes off Craigslist. No sir, I researched for weeks, grilled every contractor like I was back at Camp Pendleton, and even measured the damn roof myself, twice. My dog Charlie watched the whole operation from the porch, chewing on a busted tennis ball like it was the end of days. When the panels finally went up, it felt like a win. A big one. No more bending over for the electric company. Plus, saving the planet? Bonus points. I even cracked open a cold one, kicked back on the porch swing, and told Charlie, "We're living in the future, buddy." That lasted about 36 hours. On a Sunday morning, one of those perfect spring mornings where even the neighbor's psycho kids sounded halfway tolerable, I found the first sign of trouble. Literally, a letter tucked into my mailbox, no stamp, no envelope. Just a thin sheet of official-looking paper with HOA printed across the top like some cheap horror movie title. Notice of non-compliance. Unauthorized modifications to roof structure. I snorted. Charlie barked once like he agreed. Now look, I knew the HOA existed. Knew it in the same way you know there's bacteria on your hands. You don't see it, but you wash them anyway. I paid my dues. I read the handbook. Solar panels were allowed, pending approval. The catch? They never said a damn thing about what happens if you, God forbid, improve your property without kissing their ring first. I sat down on the porch steps, letter flapping in the breeze, and thought about my options. Option 1, rip the panels down, eat the $5,000 I'd dropped on them, and apologize to the neighborhood queen bee. Option 2, politely explain to them where they could shove their notice. Charlie leaned against my knee, heavy and warm, like he was casting his vote. I scratched behind his ears. "Yeah," I muttered, "I thought so too." Across the street, old man Peterson waved at me from his lawn chair, beer already sweating in his fist despite the morning chill. A little further down, Mrs. Ramirez dragged her garbage cans to the curb, muttering under her breath. Life went on, quiet and neighborly. Except for the slight buzz in the air, the kind you feel when you know trouble's coming, even if you can't see it yet. I folded the notice, stuffed it in my back pocket, and stood up. First rule they teach you in the course. You don't blink first, especially not when the enemy hasn't even shown their face yet. I was halfway through fixing the latch on the backyard gate when she showed up. At first, I thought it was just another Amazon delivery, judging by the tiny cloud of dust kicking up from the curb. But no, it was her, marching up my driveway like she was leading a damn parade. Perfectly pressed khakis, a pastel cardigan draped over her shoulders like a cape, clipboard clutched tight against her chest. HOA royalty had arrived. Charlie barked once, low and unimpressed. I straightened up, wiped my hands on my jeans, and waited. No sense looking rattled. "Good morning," she chirped, fake sweet. "I'm Karen Latimer, president of the Willow Creek HOA. Like I didn't know exactly who she was already. Like her name wasn't whispered around the neighborhood like a threat to small children and grown men alike. I nodded. "Morning." She paused, scanning my house like she was checking for termites. Her nose wrinkled slightly when her eyes hit the solar panels. "I assume you received our notice," she said, flipping open her clipboard with an unnecessary flourish. "Yep," I said. "No explanation, no apology. Let her work for it." Karen smiled the way a snake might right before it bites you. "You understand that modifications to the exterior of your property must be pre-approved. It's all outlined in Section 4B, subsection 9 of the Community Guidelines." "Funny thing about that," I said, crossing my arms, Section 4B also says any denial has to be based on reasonable aesthetic grounds. Solar panels aren't exactly neon pink flamingos." Her smile froze for a split second. Victory, small but satisfying. "Well," she said, voice tightening, "it's about preserving the visual integrity of the neighborhood. We can't just let everyone do whatever they want. It's a slippery slope, you know?" I nodded thoughtfully. "Sure, next thing you know, somebody might paint their front door slightly off-white." Karen's eyes narrowed. She didn't appreciate sarcasm. Noted. Charlie came to sit by my side, tail thumping once against the concrete. Karen flinched just a tiny bit, even better. "We'll need you to submit a retroactive application," she said, pulling a neatly stapled packet from under her clipboard, "and take down the panels until the approval process is complete." That one hit me right in the gut. Rip the panels down? After everything? Not happening. I took the packet from her, barely looking at it. "I'll get my lawyer to take a look. Appreciate you stopping by." That wasn't what she expected. Karen blinked, lips twitching like she wanted to say something worse, but remembered she was still in public. She settled for a tight nod. "Well, just remember, Non-compliance can result in daily fines, she said, voice all syrup and razor blades. Good to know, I said, giving her a lazy salute. Old habits die hard. She pivoted sharply and power-walked back to her car, a shiny beige SUV that screamed midlife crisis disguised as responsibility. I watched her pull away, leaving a thin line of tire marks like a skunk's calling card. I exhaled slowly and looked down at Charlie. "Well, bud," I said, scratching his ears, "I think we just made a new friend." Charlie snorted like even he didn't buy it. I sat back down on the steps, packet in hand. 50 pages of rules, threats, and paperwork. It was like boot camp all over again, except back then, at least the drill sergeants didn't smile while they kicked your ass. The sun glinted off the panels overhead, bright and stubborn. Just like me. I wasn't about to back down, not to some self-appointed dictator with a clipboard. The HOA packet sat on my kitchen table like a dead animal. I stared at it for a while, sipping lukewarm coffee straight from the pot. No fancy mugs today, no patience either. Charlie flopped down by my feet with a groan, clearly sensing that the morning had gone straight to hell. I scratched his side with my foot and flipped the first page. Homeowner Association Covenant, Rules, and Regulations, the cover said in a font so bland it almost hurt to look at. I muttered, "Buckle up, buddy," and started reading. 15 minutes later, my brain felt like it had been tenderized with a sledgehammer. Legalese stacked on legalese, paragraphs looping into each other like a bureaucratic funhouse. Half the rules didn't even make sense. Section 4B said you needed pre-approval for significant exterior modifications. Section 4C said energy-efficient improvements were encouraged. Then Section 4D basically gave the board the right to reject anything they damn well pleased to preserve neighborhood aesthetics. Real helpful. I shoved the packet aside and leaned back in the chair, arms crossed behind my head, staring up at the ceiling fan spinning slow and lazy. In the Marines, there were rules too, tons of them, but at least you knew what they were for. Here, this was just a bunch of busybodies with too much free time and a thirst for tiny scraps of power. I thought about just letting it go. Then I thought about Karen's smirk. Nope, not happening. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts until I hit a familiar name, Nate Reynolds, old squad buddy, now a lawyer, still the same smartass he was back when we shared a two-man tent in the desert. I hit call. He answered on the second ring. If this is about bail money, I'm gonna need collateral. I laughed, first time all morning. Not yet, but keep your afternoons open. What's up, man? I gave him the short version, solar panels, HOA nonsense, Queen Karen and her clipboard of doom. He whistled low. You didn't get pre-approval, huh? Didn't know I needed it. Panels are black, low profile. You can barely see them unless you're snooping from across the street with binoculars. Which, let's be real, Karen definitely is. Exactly. He chuckled. Alright, here's the thing. You're protected under state law, solar access laws. Most states have them. HOA can't flat out ban panels. They can ask for cosmetic adjustments, but they can't make you remove them unless there's some legit safety issue. I sat up straighter. You serious? As a heart attack. Send me a copy of their notice and their bylaws. I'll take a look. Worst case, we send a nasty letter quoting the relevant statutes and threaten to sue their asses into next week. I felt a grin pulling at the corner of my mouth. Charlie thumped his tail against the floor like he was in full agreement. Appreciate it, Nate. First round's on me next time you're in town. Damn right it is, and hey, keep everything. Emails, notes, that packet of doom. If it gets ugly, we want a paper trail thicker than Karen's resume. I hung up feeling better than I had in days. Not cocky, I'd seen too many good plans go sideways to let that happen, but steady, grounded. I gathered up the packet, smoothed the crinkled pages, and set up a cheap scanner app on my phone. If they wanted a paper fight, I was ready to throw down. Outside, the afternoon sun was hammering the panels on my roof, bright and stubborn. Good, let it shine. We were just getting started. It started small. Tuesday morning, I found the side gate wide open. At first, I thought maybe I'd just forgotten to latch it after mowing the lawn the night before. Easy mistake. Charlie was still in the yard, nose buried in a patch of dirt he'd been excavating like a furry archaeologist, so I didn't think much of it. I shrugged, closed the gate, and chalked it up to me losing a step. But Thursday, I spotted it. A crack, thin but deep, running right through one of the solar panels, right there on the front side, facing the street, like somebody had hit it, hard and deliberate. My stomach twisted. I climbed up the ladder for a closer look, hands automatically checking my footing like I was back on deployment. The crack wasn't natural, not a flaw from the install, not a random defect. Somebody had thrown something, maybe a rock, maybe a heavy tool, hard enough to split the tempered glass. It wouldn't kill the panel immediately, but over time, weather, rain, heat, it had spread like cancer. Charlie barked twice from below, pacing circles around the ladder. He knew something was off. Smart dog. I scanned the street. Nothing. Just the usual. Peterson snoozing on his porch, Ramirez kids kicking a soccer ball crookedly into their parents' SUV. Normal stuff. Too normal. I climbed down slow, wiping my palms on my jeans, my brain already flipping through possibilities. Karen, one of her little flying monkeys, some overzealous HOA minion trying to earn brownie points? Didn't really matter. The message was clear. We see you, we can reach you. I patched the crack with a clear epoxy kit I found in the garage. Temporary fix. Wouldn't last forever, but it bought me time. All the while, the back of my neck prickled like I was being watched. That night, I set up an old baby monitor by the back door. Not top-tier surveillance gear, but better than nothing. A relic from when my nephew lived with me for a summer. Kid never slept more than 2 hours straight. I still had the cheap camera tucked in a drawer like some half-forgotten souvenir. I sat on the porch with a beer, staring at the fuzzy black and white feed on my phone, waiting for movement. Nothing. At least not that night. Friday, just after midnight, I heard it. Soft footsteps on gravel. Charlie's ears snapped up before I even moved. He let out a low growl that vibrated against my leg. I slipped off the porch swing barefoot and crept along the side of the house. Heartbeat steady, movement slow, old instincts kicking in. Automatic. Through the gap in the fence, I caught a glimpse, a figure crouching near the side gate fiddling with something. Hoodie up, face hidden, small building, quick hands, not Karen herself, one of her volunteers maybe. I thought about shouting, about running out there, catching them red-handed. Instead, I grabbed my phone, snapped a few grainy photos through the slats, and quietly circled back inside. No use getting into a full-blown confrontation without backup. Besides, I had bigger plans. The next morning, over burnt toast and bitter coffee, I printed out the photos. Not exactly CSI quality, but good enough to show intent. I tucked them into a manila folder labeled Evidence and dropped it into a fireproof box under the bed, right next to my discharge papers and insurance documents. Charlie watched the whole thing with his head tilted, like he wasn't sure if we were prepping for war or just losing our minds. Both, probably, I told him. Later that afternoon, while I hosed down the driveway, I caught Ramirez out front wrestling with a broken sprinkler head. I wandered over, hose dripping in one hand. "Hey," I said casually, "you ever have any weird stuff happen around here, lately?" She straightened up, wiping sweat from her forehead. Her expression shifted, hesitation, then recognition. "You too?" she asked. I nodded. She glanced around, dropped her voice. "They slashed my tires last month. Didn't say anything because, you know, Karen." Yeah, I knew. Something ugly was rotting under the neatly trimmed lawns and polite smiles around here, and it wasn't just me they were after. I squeezed the hose handle tight enough that the water sprayed sideways, soaking my boot. Didn't even care. "Maybe," I said, voice low. "It's time we started pushing back." Her eyes sharpened. She nodded once, quick and firm. Yeah, war was coming, and this time I wasn't fighting alone. Saturday night. Just late enough that the sidewalks had emptied, early enough that the drunks hadn't started howling at the moon yet. Perfect. I killed the porch light, pulled my hoodie up, and opened the side gate slow and quiet. Charlie stayed inside, pacing by the window, not thrilled about being left out. But this wasn't his fight yet. 3 short knocks on the Ramirez back door. Pause. 2 more. We were keeping it old school, like some kind of suburban resistance cell. The door creaked open, a sliver. Mrs. Ramirez's sharp eyes peeked out before she pulled it wide enough for me to slip in. Inside, the kitchen smelled like burnt coffee and something fried. A battered folding table was set up by the window, a few cheap plastic chairs around it. Sitting there, Ramirez, Old Man Peterson, and Jody from 2 houses down. Good people, quiet, the kind you don't notice much until you need them. Peterson lifted a shaky hand in greeting. "About time someone said enough's enough." I pulled up a chair. "Let's get to it." Ramirez leaned forward, elbows on the table. I talked to a couple others. They're scared. Karen's got them thinking she can take their houses if they breathe wrong. Jody nodded, fidgeting with the strap of her purse. She fined me $200 last month for having a flower pot that clashed with the color scheme. A flower pot, man. I clenched my jaw, feeling the old familiar tightness in my chest, the one that usually came right before something explosive. "This isn't just about me anymore," I said. "It's about control, fear, and if we let her get away with it, it won't stop." Peterson snorted. "Hasn't stopped in 20 years. She's just gotten meaner." I pulled out the grainy photos from the other night. Hoodie-clad saboteur caught in the act. Set them down in the middle of the table. Peterson squinted. Ain't much, but that her kid? The one with the golf cart? Could be, I said. Doesn't matter. We got proof someone's messing with property. It's a start. Ramirez cracked her knuckles, slow and deliberate. What's the plan? Simple question. Not a simple answer. I laid it out the only way I knew how, straight and clean, like an op briefing. First, we document everything. Photos, videos, witness statements if we can get them. Second, we go higher, city code enforcement, state housing boards. Karen thinks she's untouchable because nobody pushes back. We change that. Jody raised a hand like a nervous student. What about, getting the board out? Elections? I nodded. Eventually, but first we weaken her. Show people she's not the queen of the damn world. Peterson chuckled, a low, dry sound. About time. We spent the next hour divvying up jobs. Ramirez would start gathering old violation notices, hers and anyone else's she could talk into it. Jody volunteered to watch Karen's house from across the street. Nothing illegal, just community concern, the way Karen liked to preach it. Me? I'd start prepping the legal side. Nate had already agreed to help if things escalated. I glanced around the kitchen, the peeling linoleum underfoot, the faint hum of an ancient fridge. These people weren't soldiers, they weren't fighters. But they were tired enough to stand up. By the time we wrapped up, it was close to midnight. We didn't shake hands, didn't hug, didn't make speeches. We just nodded to each other, small and grim. Out on the street, the neighborhood lay quiet, tidy, sleeping. But under the surface, something was shifting. War wasn't declared with banners and fireworks. Sometimes it started with a broken panel, a cracked flower pot, a pissed-off Marine, and a kitchen full of fed-up neighbors. And this time, we were in it together. Monday morning, bright and early, I mailed the first salvo. Certified mail, signature required. One thick, beautifully threatening packet addressed straight to the Willow Creek HOA. Attention, Karen Latimer, supreme ruler of all she surveys. Inside, a friendly little letter drafted by Nate, quoting chapter and verse of the state's solar access law, along with a polite suggestion they cease and desist any harassment or interference with my legally protected energy system or risk legal action. Polite? Director? Loaded like a .45 under the table. I didn't expect Karen to fold right away. That wasn't her style, but I wanted her to feel it, to know we weren't playing by her rules anymore. By noon, the retaliation started. A bright yellow violation notice flapped on my front door like some passive-aggressive flag of war. This time, the offense? Excessive weed growth along the property line. I laughed out loud standing there in my driveway, holding the slip in one hand, coffee in the other. My excessive weeds were 3 dandelions and a stubborn patch of crabgrass hiding behind the mailbox. Charlie barked at the notice like he knew it was bullshit. I peeled it off, crumpled it into a ball, and lobbed it straight into the trash can. An hour later, Peterson called. They got me too, he said, gruff and amused. Claimed my fence is 2 inches too high. Been standing since '92. Ramirez texted 5 minutes after that. Violation? Unsanctioned paint color on backyard shed. Her shed was gray, same gray it had been when Karen herself signed off on it 5 years ago. Jody sent a photo of her unapproved landscaping fixture, a small garden gnome flipping the bird. Okay, that one maybe was fair game, but still, Karen wasn't just mad, she was sending a message. Push her, and she'd bury you in paperwork and petty fines until you cracked. Good thing Stubborn was practically my middle name. That night we met again, this time at Peterson's garage, hidden behind rows of dusty tools and a half-assembled fishing boat he'd been pretending to fix for a decade. We laid out the notices like trophies on an old workbench. She's going full scorched earth, Ramirez said, tapping her notice with a chewed-up pencil. How do we fight back? I cracked open a notebook, flipping to a page Nate had helped me set up. Complaint procedures, city code enforcement, and state HOA oversight board. Documentation, I said. We drown her in it, every false notice, every abuse of authority. We file official complaints, not just to her, but over her head. City regulators, state ombudsman, even the Attorney General's office if we have to. Peterson chuckled. Paper cuts, death by 1,000 of them. Exactly. We assigned tasks. Ramirez would file city code complaints about harassment. Jody would handle the state HOA violations reporting system. Peterson somehow had a nephew in zoning enforcement. He promised to mention the sudden flood of questionable citations. I'd keep stacking legal warnings through Nate. Nobody said it was going to be fast, but we weren't aiming for fast anymore. We were aiming for inevitable. By the end of the week, Karen must have gotten the hint. I spotted her standing stiff-backed on her porch one afternoon, phone glued to her ear, waving a stack of papers around like she was trying to cast a spell on the neighborhood. Good, let her sweat. But the pressure was getting to us too. I found myself checking the locks twice before bed, installing a cheap security camera out front. Charlie stuck closer than usual, tail low, ears twitching at every creak and groan of the house settling at night. Fear was a living thing now, coiled under the floorboards, humming behind the drywall. We were winning, sure, but the cost was starting to show, and something told me Karen wasn't nearly done fighting dirty yet. It happened just after 2 a.m. Charlie woke me first. One sharp bark, not his usual someone's walking their poodle bark, but the serious, all-business kind that had me up and moving before my brain fully caught up. I slid out of bed, bare feet hitting the cold floor. The baby monitor feed flickered on my phone, nothing but black and white fuzz. Damn thing must have glitched again. But then I heard it. A metallic clink near the back fence. The kind of sound someone makes when they don't belong somewhere, and they're not being careful. I didn't bother with shoes. Just grabbed the baseball bat I kept leaning by the door, a leftover habit from deployments. You don't reach for your Glock unless you're ready for a body bag. A bat sends a different kind of message. Charlie whined low, vibrating with tension as I cracked the door open and slipped out into the night. The air was cool, sharp with the smell of watered lawns and something sourer, nerves maybe. Fear. I moved along the side of the house, sticking to the shadows. Old muscle memory kicked in. Shallow breathing, weight on the balls of my feet, scanning corners. At the edge of the backyard, near the panels, I spotted movement. Small figure. Hoodie pulled low, fumbling with something near the wiring conduit. Sabotage. Again. Except this time, they were sloppy, desperate. I crept closer, every step measured. 10 feet, 5. Then Charlie couldn't hold it anymore. He let out a deep, rolling growl that shook the air. The figure jumped, panicked, dropping whatever tool they were holding. They bolted for the fence. I lunged forward, adrenaline surging, and snagged the back of their hoodie just as they scrambled up the chain link. Dead weight hit the ground with a thud. The kid twisted under me because that's what it was. A kid. Maybe 16, skinny, sneakers scuffed and laces untied. "Get off me, man," he yelped, voice cracking. I didn't hit him, didn't need to, just pinned him there, breathing hard while Charlie circled, barking loud enough to wake the whole damn block. "Who sent you?" I growled, low and cold. The kid squirmed, eyes wide. "I don't know, nobody, I swear." Bullshit. He was shaking like a leaf, and not just from fear. Guilt oozed off him like sweat. "Karen put you up to this?" I pressed. He hesitated. Split-second flicker of something across his face. Fear, recognition. Then he clamped his mouth shut, staring anywhere but at me. That was enough. I yanked him to his feet, dusted him off none too gently, and marched him around front. By then, a few porch lights were blinking on, curious faces peeking out from behind curtains. I didn't care. I frog-marched the kid straight to his mom's front porch, 3 houses down, and hammered on the door until she answered, bleary-eyed and furious. "Found your boy trying to destroy private property," I said flatly. "Middle of the night. Thought you should know." She dragged him inside without a word, slammed the door so hard the frame shook. Good. Let her deal with that. I walked back slow, bat dangling from one hand, Charlie pressed close to my side. At my porch, Ramirez was waiting, arms crossed, sweatshirt zipped tight against the chill. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, voice rough. She hesitated, then added, "Word's gonna spread. People saw. Karen's losing control if she's sending kids to do her dirty work." I nodded, muscles aching with the need to move, to act. "It's time." Ramirez smiled, fierce and tired. "Then let's finish it." Later, alone again, I sat on the steps, staring out at the street. The kid's face stuck with me, the fear, the confusion. He wasn't the real enemy, he was just a pawn. But pawns get sacrificed all the same. Charlie laid his head on my knee, heavy and solid. I scratched behind his ears, my mind already racing ahead. Tomorrow, we go public. Tomorrow, the gloves come off. The Willow Creek HOA meeting was held in the Community Rec Center, a squat beige building that smelled like old carpet and boiled coffee. Perfect battlefield. I showed up early, manila folder tucked under my arm. Charlie left home this time. This was no place for a dog, or maybe it was, considering the crowd. The room was already half full, fold-out chairs arranged in tight rows, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a hive of angry bees. And there, near the front, perched behind a long plastic table draped in a sad blue cloth, sat Karen. Hair sprayed into submission, peach blazer sharp enough to cut glass, clipboard ready. She saw me walk in and stiffened, lips tightening into a thin, bloodless line. Good. I took a seat near the aisle, folder on my lap, heart thudding slow and steady. More residents trickled in: Ramirez, Jody, Peterson, a few others. Eyes flicked toward me, nods, quiet, cautious solidarity. Karen rapped her gavel like she thought she was presiding over the Supreme Court. "Let's come to order, please." She launched into the agenda: budget updates, landscaping approvals, pet waste violations, the usual HOA micromanagement parade. I waited, patient, focused, like a spring compressed tight, just waiting for the right moment. Finally, she got to new business. "If there are no objections," Karen said, giving a cursory glance around the room, "we'll move to close." I stood up. Chair legs scraped loud against the tile, heads turned. "I object," I said. Karen blinked, like she couldn't quite believe someone would actually say it out loud. "This isn't the forum for personal grievances," she snapped, voice clipped. "Not personal," I said, stepping into the center of the room. "Community concern." I held up the folder. "I've documented multiple instances of harassment, property damage, and abuse of authority by this board, specifically by Mrs. Latimer." A ripple of noise ran through the crowd, whispers, shifting bodies. Karen's face turned a bright, blotchy red. "That's absurd. You're violating procedure." "Got the procedures right here," I said, flipping to the HOA bylaws appendix Nate had bookmarked for me. Section 7, A, homeowners may present grievances during scheduled meetings with a simple majority request. Ramirez stood up, so moved. Peterson, bless his cranky old heart, barked from the back row, "Seconded." Karen looked like she was about to choke on her own tongue. She fumbled through her papers, desperate for a loophole. Too late. I laid it out cold and clean. The sabotage attempt, the bogus citations, the harassment of multiple residents, the abuse of authority with the violation notices, photos, letters, complaint forms, all copied, cataloged, time-stamped. Each piece of evidence felt like slamming a hammer on a coffin lid. Karen tried to interrupt, sputtering about maintaining order and protecting standards, but the tide had turned. Even her loyalists, the golf cart brigade, were shrinking down in their seats, looking anywhere but at her. By the time I finished, the room felt different, charged, awake. Jody stood up, holding a stack of her own notices. "I move we conduct a no-confidence vote on the current board president." The air crackled, and someone called out, "Seconded." Karen's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. Hands went up. First timidly, then fast, like people suddenly remembered they had spines. I didn't even have to count. Majority, easily. Karen slammed her clipboard down, papers scattering across the table. She pushed to her feet, face twisted in something between rage and disbelief, and stormed out without a word. The door banged shut behind her like a gunshot. Silence settled over the room for a long beat, then low murmurs, cautious smiles, small relieved laughs. We'd won. Not cleanly, not perfectly, but enough. Ramirez caught my eye and gave a small, grim nod. Peterson just grinned wide and crooked, like a man who'd lived long enough to know every victory comes with bruises. I sat back down, the adrenaline draining out of me all at once. It wasn't over, not really. But tonight, at least, we'd taken our neighborhood back. And tomorrow, we'd deal with whatever came next. The morning after the meeting, I sat on the front porch with Charlie, a busted mug of coffee in one hand and a roll of duct tape in the other. The fence was still a little crooked from the kids' late-night scramble. The panels still had that hairline crack. The neighborhood still had that tense, brittle edge, like everyone was waiting to see if the ground would shift again. But the sun was shining, and for once it didn't feel like a warning. Charlie dozed at my feet, his tail twitching every so often. Every car that rolled by made his ears flick, but he didn't bother getting up. Maybe he knew we'd earned a little peace, even if it was temporary. Across the street, Ramirez was already out front, dragging bags of mulch to her flower beds. Peterson sat on his porch, whittling at something with a pocket knife, humming under his breath. The world hadn't changed overnight. But the way people stood? A little straighter now. A little less small. I peeled a strip of duct tape and wrapped it around the broken latch on the side gate. Not pretty, but functional. Good enough for now. That's the thing about fighting back. You don't get shiny medals or ticker tape parades. You get a cracked fence, a scarred-up solar panel, neighbors who nod at you a little longer than they used to, and sometimes, if you're lucky, you get the enemy to run with their tail tucked between their legs. Karen's beige SUV was gone from her driveway. Word was she was taking an indefinite leave from HOA duties. Translation, she got forced out before she could get voted out. Good riddance. Still, part of me stayed on edge. People like Karen didn't just vanish. They regrouped. They plotted. Maybe next time it'd be some new puppet president, or a quiet, grinding return to the same old tactics. I sipped my coffee, grimacing at the bitterness, and thought about the next board election. Might have to throw my hat in the ring after all. Not because I wanted to, because if you don't step up, someone like Karen always will. Charlie snored louder, oblivious. I leaned back against the porch rail, feeling the early sun warm my face. We'd won a round. Not the war, but enough. Enough to breathe. Enough to fix what was broken, one slow piece at a time. And if they came back swinging? Good. I was just getting warmed up.